Can I? Maybe. But it's 2:05. But it's 2:05. So we are going to get to the class, because that's what's important. The class. Welcome back. If you don't know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, and this is Silicon Dojo, authorities, gatekeepers, free to use your hands-on technology education that empowers you to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do, at least theoretically. Basically, we have 3 components. We're about to have the 4th component really soon of this program. So you are watching the online Zoom class. So this is interactive. If you have a question, raise your hand in Zoom, and I will answer the question just as soon as I have a moment to talk about it. Beyond that, we actually are doing classes, in-person classes here in Asheville, North Carolina. We are going to be doing classes in Research Triangle, or Durham. I don't know. People get a little picky about words up there. Anyways, we secured a place in Durham to do classes, so we're going to start doing those relatively soon. And actually, also, with our brand new website, I have figured out how to do e-courses on the website. So we're actually going to have on-demand e-classes on the website too. And again, the entire point of this, the idea is, what if human beings were actually valuable? What if we actually believe that empowering human beings would make the world a better place? And if we believed that, how would we do education? And that's what I'm trying to do with this point in time. Anyways, so that's what we're trying to do here with Silicon Dojo. Let's see here. So we got the website. So we got silicondojo.com. So this is the hub. This is the hub, the hive of all of our activity. It is a bit of a disaster. It's kind of rapid prototype. There's something called rapid prototyping. This is a rapid prototype. I'm using Wix, but if you go here, we got a whole bunch of information, and it's getting better and better by the day. You can come down here. You can see our upcoming classes that you can actually RSVP to. So this is the REST API. We have an OpenAI class again in Asheville. We have the templates class on Zoom. We have a Raspberry Pi class on Zoom. And then as we have more and more classes, especially once we start doing those things in Durham, this will be your one-stop shop to come and see what new classes are coming up. If you scroll all the way down, you can see our nice calendar. So you can see we're doing quite a bit of education here. Beyond that, if you go down, we do have YouTube videos. So basically, I am using this camera right here for the Zoom, and literally right beside it is a different camera that's recording all of this in 4K. So Zoom resolution is dog snot. Supposedly, you're seeing this in 1080p. It's the worst 1080p resolution I've ever seen in my life. But the nice part is this camera over here is actually recording in 4K. So if you want to be able to zoom in and actually see some different things with the code, you can watch that on the YouTube channel. And those videos go up generally the day of or the day after. I do these classes. So again, we got the Python regex class we just did, validation and sanitization with JavaScript, all of that kind of stuff is there. Beyond that, we have GitHub. So GitHub is where all the documentation and the notes are. So for all of these classes, this is where I create the documentation, I put the notes, and you can come here for the code and everything else. I don't know, where is this? Maybe I have to refresh, and we come down to JavaScript and REST APIs, and we click on this, and we can see we have the code examples here, and we can have the notes here. So if you want any of that, again, all of that is open for you to use. You can take all of this information and use it for profit or whatever else. We are doing I am posting those videos directly onto this website too to make life a little bit easier. So that also exists. This is the cool thing. This is the cool new thing that really should take Silicon Dojo up a level. So I figured out how to, with Wix, create these online programs. And so this is the Python introduction series. So this is just, to be clear, this is just the series I did on YouTube a while ago. Start. But you can click Start to start the program. Oh, come on. Live demos, even for a website. Anyways, and so they've got all these steps here. Right? There's these steps here, right? And these are all the different classes. So Python coding introduction, right? And run Python scripts, variables and concatenation, right? So this is all here. You can click on this particular thing, and you can watch the class. When you feel like you finished it, you can say, I completed the step, and it checks things off. And so this is an old program. So these classes here from like a year and a half ago. And so my goal is, now that I actually know how to do this, is I'm going to start doing this for all of the technology we deal with. So whether it's Python or Bottle, so we'll have like a Bottle series. And the Bottle series is, this is how you do a route, and this is how you do a redirect, and this is how you do a get, blah, blah, blah. And then you can just come here and you're like, crap, I forget how to do a get in Bottle. And you can click on that particular class. There will be a video for the class. There will be documentation underneath. And that is a way to try to, what's it called? Words. Thank God I don't have to say words a lot. Supplement. That is a way that you can supplement your education here and hopefully make life a little bit easier. So that does exist. I will say that do remember Silicon Dojo is free to the end user. That's not actually free. It does cost me money, especially with going to Durham and all that kind of stuff. So if you are on the site, you will see there is a link to support Silicon Dojo donor box. If you click on that, that will take you here. If you can throw in $1, $5, $10, $1,000 a month, I just keep putting that out there. That would be ever so lovely. And finally, there is a LinkedIn account for me, for Eli Etherton. If you want to follow that to see what I'm doing, that exists. And yeah, that's about it. So when we go to Durham, just so you know, it'll be at this place called American Underground, which is really cool. It's a great place in Durham. If you don't know about it, basically it costs $199 a month, and you get unlimited conference rooms and classroom spaces, and people from the outside world are able to come in. If you want additional students or employees or whatever, it's only $100 extra a month. It's actually a really, really, really great place. So if you're in the Durham area, I would highly recommend you take a look at AmericanUnderground.com. We are going to be spending a lot of time there, or I'm going to be spending a lot of time there. I don't know what the hell any of you people are doing. So anyways, that is what is going on. So today, JavaScript. I do not know what I did in my life that is making the spaghetti monster punish me to such a degree that I'm continuously having to teach JavaScript. But anyways, when the spaghetti monster says jump, you jump. And so that's why we're doing JavaScript right now. I don't like JavaScript. Just so everybody understands, I get snarky about JavaScript. You know why I get snarky about JavaScript? Because I don't like JavaScript. I want to be crystal clear. That is a personal opinion. That is a personal bias. Don't worry about it too much. If you like JavaScript, God bless, you do all the JavaScript that you want. If you're like me, it just kind of makes you want to cry. It makes you want to die inside. I remember when JavaScript was a little baby and all you used it for was drop-down menus and hovering over things. How the hell that damn thing turned into this mess, I do not know. But anyways, it is an important language. So the reason it's an important language is when you are dealing with web applications, right? We talk about the stack, right? The stack of technology. And so if you're looking at your stack, you'll have your server. That will have an operating system, most likely Linux. Then we use Python here as what's called a back-end programming language. On top of that, you use a framework such as Bottle. So Bottle is what we use to actually create the web applications. And under here, you have SQL, structured query language, and a whole bunch of stuff, right? But this is all on your side. Your side, right? So when a user basically starts using your app, they go through the cloud, they communicate with your systems send information back to them, and then they're looking at the website. Well, here's the thing. If everything has to get processed over here, one, it's a huge resource load on your systems. And again, we're technology people. We're lazy and we're cheap. We copy and paste, and we dump crap onto other people. That's what we do, right? So anyways, if everything is running here, basically, it has to run in our systems that require resources. And not only that, is if the user is doing things, if everything's running on the back end, it's very hard for really like dynamic websites when you're doing things with the web page, because everything would have to get sent back here, then this would have to process, and that would have to go back to them, and it gets to be really, really janky. And so basically, the back end programming languages are very good for security purposes. They're very good for many things. But what you have with JavaScript is you have what's called the front-end language, and this is actually running directly on their web browser. And so the nice part about this is all we do is we essentially send them text. We send them ASCII text. That ASCII text basically is turned into the program in their web browser, and then that burns their CPU, and that burns their memory and all of that kind of stuff. You don't actually have to have the same issues with resource consumption. The thing you do have to be careful about whenever you're using JavaScript is, do remember the entire JavaScript gets sent to the user system, so don't put any kind of secure information that they should not be getting, right? Do not send the entire table of everybody's social security numbers just so they can see their security number, because in the web app, they'll be able to see their security number. If they right click and then do view source, they'll be able to see all the text that went to them in order for that JavaScript to run. So you got to be careful there. The other interesting thing, though, is since JavaScript is now running on the user's computer, we can now start pulling information from them, right? So things like, exactly what operating system they're using, what agent they're using, Windows screen size. We can actually start pulling a lot of information from them to get sent back to us so that we can spy on them. Because that's the important thing nowadays. Grabbing everybody's data. So anyways, that's why JavaScript is important. And today what we're going to be talking about is running REST APIs and getting some of the user data from the client side. We talked about REST APIs before. I love REST APIs. Basically, these are APIs that allow you to very easily access information from services. We talked about this before, service-oriented architecture. There's all of these different services that are out on the internet, and basically you can use modern programming languages, such as Python, such as JavaScript, to go out and communicate with those REST APIs in order to bring some kind of functionality back to your particular system. So we have been dealing with REST APIs with Python. Right, so we use the requests module and the get function in Python to be able to go out to a REST API and bring information back. Once we brought it back, we were able to parse it with something called JSON. And so we did that, again, back on the back end. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the REST APIs on the front end. The good part about this is basically the information doesn't have to go through your server and back up to them, right? So basically, if you're doing the REST API call here, your system has to communicate with the service. That information has to come back. Then your server has to send that information to the user, right? So we talk about things like latency. We talk about things like lag. The more hops data has to go through, the more lag there's going to be, obviously. So if you can just have the client computer make the REST API call, and then the information goes back to the client computer, that can make the whole performance thing a hell of a lot better. So that's one of the reasons to think about REST APIs with JavaScript versus REST APIs with Python. The other thing, too, is what you can start thinking about is you may actually want to start creating your own REST APIs. So we'll do this in classes in the future. So you could theoretically create your own REST APIs so that JavaScript is now going through the REST APIs instead of how it's going now. But anyways, that gets to be its own thing. Best language ever. Sure. You're not baiting me. You're not baiting me. I'm not talking about Trump, and I'm not arguing about JavaScript. I am here to teach you how to use this language. Anyways, it is funny. It is funny. You talk with tech people, and we just have the things we like. There are the things we like and the things we hate. And we'll try to tell you. We will try to convince you that the reason that we hate something is because of how awful it really is. But the reality is we just don't like it. Okay, so anyways, the class we're going to be dealing with today, so we're dealing with JavaScript. We've had a couple of JavaScript classes up until this point, but again, one of the big issues between programming languages is you can know what to do, you can know what you want to do, but trying to figure out how to do it in that programming language can be a royal pain in the ass. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is basically JavaScript's version of F strings for concatenation. So concatenation is where you take static text and then basically you add on the value of a variable to it for basically like hello world. So hello Bob. Hello, Emily. Hello, whatever, right? So basically, in the JavaScript world, this is something called a template literal. So in Python, it's called an F string. In JavaScript, it's called a template literal. It is as it is. The more confusing part, though, is, I don't know if you can see that. I can't really see it. Anyways, when you do a template literal, so this is a single quotation mark. So we've dealt with double quotation marks and we've dealt with single quotation marks. And now one of the big problems in Python is when you open with a double quotation mark, you have to be careful about using other double quotation marks because it might close in the middle of a statement and you don't want that. The way JavaScript gets around that is it uses a backtick for its template literal. So the backtick, again, I did have to look at it, right? So basically, it's this little button under the squiggly button on your computer. So it's not a single quotation mark, it is a backtick. And so when you're going to be doing a template literal, again, concatenation in the JavaScript world, you do a backtick, whatever, static, and then in order to call the value of that variable, you do $, squiggly bracket, variable name in squiggly bracket, and then you close with a backtick. That is how you do template literals in JavaScript, because that is the syntax of an awful programming language. That's actually a pretty decent idea. Let's see here. The other thing with this is that everything that I'm going to be showing you today does not require a server. So a lot of times when you hear about HTML or JavaScript or whatever else, you hear about a web server, Apache, Nginx, GoDaddy, whatever else. Everything that I'm going to be showing you today does not need a web server. It'll simply run. So basically you can write all of this, you can put it onto your desktop, you can double click, open it in a web browser, and it should work, right? So if we go here, and I want a joke, REST IP joke, I can just double click on that. Oops. Oh no, REST joke, I just double click on it, and there we go, we got our joke. So I'll talk about this later, but here is the JSON value that we're pulling from this joke API. The setup is, who did the wizard marry? Punchline, his ghoul friend. Anyways, again, if we refresh this, there are 10 types of people in this world. Punchline, those who understand binary and those who don't. Haha. Anyways, I just want to show you, again, this is literally just sitting in my file directory, absolutely nothing else. You do not have to set up an Apache web server or any of that kind of stuff for what we are going to be doing today. And so with that, are there any questions? Any questions? No questions. Okay, good. The next thing that I do want to talk about a little bit, we haven't talked about this a lot. Again, I have to clean up how I teach JavaScript. Do remember all these classes are beta classes, so I'm figuring out how to teach you folks as I go along. There is something called the console. So in JavaScript likes to use the console a lot because when there are errors, basically you want the program to tell you there are errors without necessarily blasting it up on the web browser screen for everybody to see. So there's this thing called the console. Let me go here. Let's take a look at some. So this REST joke, right? Okay, so REST joke. If I come here, right, I take a look at this, you go to show page source. And so again, depending on exactly what browser you're using, you might have to go to ChatGPT to ask them how to get to the damn console. But you go here and this shows you the source, right? This is the source and this is the JavaScript. You can go here to console and the console will tell you basically if there are any errors or if you write anything else out of the console. Why this is important is, let's say I do in here, right? So it's supposed to fetch. So basically this is like the get, right? And so I'm just screwing up the URL. I'm just screwing up the URL, just so you see, right? So I do that. And then when I refresh, what we're going to see here at the console is there is an error. Failed to load resources. Service responded with a 404 error. Official joke, random joke, and then it tries to tell you, right, the joke at line 8 or line 19. I can go and I can take a look and That's right there. So it's kind of right where I made the mistake. So anyways, this is what the console is. So when you start playing with your projects, I'm not going to talk about this really the rest of the class, but when you start dealing with your projects and you fail, you screw up, because that's what we do, right? Come to the console, see what errors are being spit out, and then try to fix it. All right, so if I go back here, and all I do is I delete those, I do this, I refresh. Ooh, now I just got this one stupid error about favicons that I don't care about. And so that is what the console is. And again, once you're dealing with the JavaScript world, this is going to be a very, very, very important thing. A lot of times when you're going out and you're looking for sample projects, you're looking for things to play around with, one of the things you'll notice is a lot of times that the documentation will be spitting out a lot of things to the console. And so if you're trying to figure out what's going on, you need to go to the console log instead of just trying to look at it on the web page. Oh, that's on you. Jock, what's up?
Once you're doing this, maybe I'm just don't understand how this works. But when you're running code in JavaScript, doesn't your IDE do the same thing, or you won't use an IDE when you do it with JavaScript?
Well, because this is getting run on the that's where again I've got to figure out how to teach you folks this. So there's something called Node. Node.js is a framework for JavaScript to allow JavaScript to run on the back end, basically on the server. So when you're running Node JavaScript, you can actually pull out the responses directly in your IDE. The issue is with this, though, this is a web page, and so this isn't actually going to be rendered until you actually send it to the web browser, and so the errors aren't going to show up until you get here. So basically what I'm saying is, I need to figure out a better way to teach you folks this. But when you're building these kind of web pages, going to the console at this point is going to be the way that you do troubleshooting.
When we're dealing with JavaScript.
When you're dealing with JavaScript and you're building web pages, yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. Again, it's one of those, but seriously, how do you teach people? It's always funny. Again, I talk about that where people are like, oh, if people who can do and people who can't teach. And I'm just like, just stop, just walk away. Do you know what it's like to try to do you know what it's like to try to take what you know and then condense it into a class and then try to present it to other people and not have it be a complete and utter mess? Anyways, okay, the first thing we're going to take a look at today is navigator values, right? So, there is something called Navigator, and it has different properties, and it allows you to see a lot of interesting stuff about the user when they come to your web page. And again, once you start creating much more complicated JavaScript web applications, you can use this for different things, such as Firefox is going to present a web page slightly differently than Safari will present a web page, slightly differently than whatever, right? So one of the things you have is navigator.userAgent will actually give you the operating system and the web browser that the user is using in order to access your web page. So let's say you're using something like the Microsoft Stack, right? So you have the Microsoft Stack, and in the Microsoft Stack, there's Active Directory and all kinds of that kind of thing. And so when somebody is coming to your website, right, it's a website, but when they start using your app is going to require integration with the rest of the stack. And so Firefox or Safari may not integrate with Windows Stack very well. So basically you can say navigator.userAgent if Edge, or whatever the hell Microsoft's current browser is, then allow the person in, else tell them whatever browser they're using isn't a great browser for this particular application. So you might see this a lot in the real world. You don't see it as much anymore, but basically you'll go to a web page, and again, you may be using Firefox or Safari, and it'll say this web page is not optimized for your web browser. We recommend you use a web browser where we get a residual from, right? So anyways. You have the ability to look for like some things like the user agent, navigator.language. So this says what language the particular computer is set up for. So this might be interesting, again, especially if you have like an international website. People are coming onto your website. What is the default language that their web browser has? Platform, this is basically what operating system that's supposed to be running on. Doesn't really work that well. And then navigator, hardware concurrency. I think this is your CPUs. So it can actually say how many CPUs you're running. So with this, I'm going to, let's see here. Let's browser info. Let's take a look at this up here. So this is the script, right? So basically what we're going to be doing today is we create a div and we give it the ID of display. So one of the big things with JavaScript is remember the DOM, it's called the Document Object Model. You have to identify things so JavaScript can deal with them. An ID is supposed to be unique on the entire page. So if you say do something to this ID, there should only be one of them. So we're going to create the script here. So this is just HTML. We're going to open and close the JavaScript. We're going to create a constant for display, document.getElementById display. So we're going to get element ID with the name of display, and then we're going to assign that to the variable display within this JavaScript code, and it's going to be a constant, which means it's not supposed to change with this code. Then we're going to say display.innerHTML, so the inner HTML for display, backtick, so we open with a backtick, we close with a backtick, user agent, hyphen, hyphen, and then we're going to do navigator.user agent value. Language, hyphen, hyphen, navigator.language value, platform, hyphen, hyphen, navigator.platform value, CPUs, hyphen, hyphen, navigator.hardware concurrency value. And so basically this will all get printed within that display div. So we go over and we do the this is supposed to be on Do Not Disturb. Hello? The spammers can't even be bothered to answer their phones anymore. Like they spam you, and then they want you to wait for them to answer. Anyways, what was I doing? I was doing the browser info. Browser info. So we open this up, and this is what we get. All right. So we get user agent, hyphen, hyphen. So we got Macintosh, Intel Mac, we got OS 10, 10.15.7, so it shows me the version of my operating system, shows me it's using WebKit, 605.1.15, like Gecko, showing a version, and it's showing me a Safari version of 605.1.1.15, right? So this is a way I can see basically what kind of operating system is being run, what kind of web browser is being run, and what their current updates are. So this is one of the things you have to be thinking about in the modern world. We talk about fingerprinting systems, and again, this is where I talk about anonymity. That's great. You know all the adults nowadays, and they're running around, and they're talking about being anonymous on the internet. It's like, wow, that's adorable. Do you believe in Santa Claus too? Does Santa Claus bring you anonymity? Why I bring that up is because basically look at this, right? So if I have a web server, if you're coming to my web server, I can get what your IP address is. So with your IP address, and we'll mess around with this a little bit later, I can get a lot of geographic information about you. Again, and this is without using your GPS or anything, right? IP addresses, there are database systems that match IP addresses to geographic data. I can know what your ISP is, I can know what your zip code is, I can know the basic area of the world that you're in, and I can get a whole bunch of other information. So I have an IP address for you, which is a unique identifier. That unique identifier then gives me a bunch of geographic information about you. The interesting thing here is what if you have multiple computers? What if you have multiple people in one house that are using different computers? Right? Well, right, if you got 5 people in a house, then that's 5 different people. But if you look at this, again, think about it. Even if everybody's using Macs, which they probably aren't, things like the version of the Safari that they're using. So now I have your IP address, and I have the specific version that you're using of Safari. Again, depending on how you have updates set up. Different people in your facility are going to have different ones. Beyond that, I can look at the language, English US. Beyond that, I can look at the platform. So again, this is the actual operating system, so basically it's supposed to be Mac Intel, and then even the CPUs. It can actually get the number of CPUs that the system is running, which is 8. So I've got an IP address, I've got the user agent information, I've got your CPU information, I can get some other things along the way, and that's how we start building a fingerprint for each particular user that is coming to our site. And again, the cool part about this, the awesome part about this isn't cookies, boys and girls. Again, one of the interesting things with Europe is awesome, right? GDPR and all that. They're really worried about cookies. They're so worried about cookies. What about the cookies? Who the hell cares? Who the hell cares about the cookies? This is all information I can just get. And I don't have to worry about cookies. And I probably don't really have to tell you much about it either. So this is all the kind of information you can get basically from this navigator, right? So navigator.useragent, navigator.language, navigator.platform, navigator.hardware concurrency. You can get things like memory, you can get some other information too, and this is how you were able to access that type of thing. Again, right now, just so we're clear, this is only showing up on this particular web page. So basically, I go to this web page that's on my computer, and this is showing up, it's only here. That's where we'll get to later in the class, where I'll show you how to take this information and ship it off to another server. Beyond that, we then have screen size, which is an interesting thing. Again, when you start talking about like how do you fingerprint systems, how do you know which system is system? So you have screen and window values. You can access how large a user's screen is and how big the browser window is as the user views your site. All right, so if we go over, we take a look at this screen size. So this is the code. Again, we've got a div ID of display like we did before, and this is our script. We're going to get the element by ID. We're going to call that display. Display.innerHTML is going to equal this information here. So we're going to say total screen size is, and then we can call the value for screen.width x screen.height. So we can simply ask, what is a screen width and what is a screen height? Again, we start talking about fingerprinting systems. Different people are going to have different computers, which means they're going to have different resolutions on those computers, right? Available screen size, so basically how big the browser window is, might be different for different users, and then the viewport size, inner width, and inner height. If we go over, take a look at this one, we can take a look at screen size. I double click on this, right? And so for this particular computer, right, so this is plugged into the system. So we're just doing 1920 by 1080. So this gives me the resolution for this particular computer. Available screen size is 1920 by 1996. That's generally because of the address bar and that type of thing at the top, and the viewport size currently is 1920 by 1080, right? So if I shrink this, so let's say I bring this out, let's say I do this, so I'm shrinking it, now I can refresh, and so we see total screen size is still 1920 by 1080, available screen size is still 1920 by 1996, viewport size is now 434 by 237. All right, so if I change that and I refresh it, again, that will just change. So the viewport size is this. Total screen size is the entire resolution of the screen. Available screen size is the resolution of the screen minus like the toolbar or whatever that you can actually get access to. So again, getting this kind of information can be useful depending on like what kind of images that you'll show. Again, from a functional standpoint, let's say you have different sized pictures. Right? So if somebody is on a small screen, you may want to feed them a small picture. If somebody's on a large screen, you might want to feed them a large picture, that type of deal. So you can actually get that information from this, again, screen. So screen.width, screen.height, screen.available width, screen.available height, and then window, that's the actual browser itself, window.inner width, and window.inner height. So that's some of the information that you can get. And there's a lot more of this type of information that you can get, but you kind of have to go around, you can have to go and kind of play with it and figure out what information it is that you care about. The important thing, again, for a lot of you folks to be thinking about though, from like a cybersecurity standpoint, is just the fact all of this information is so easy to access. So again, things like fingerprinting people's systems is rather simple. Rather simple, as they say. Okay, let's see here. So that's the basic thing with getting information from users using either Navigator or the screen. We're going to go into REST APIs. Is there any question on anything we've gone up until this point? No hands? Okay, we're going to get into the REST APIs. So again, the cool thing with REST APIs, if you have this running on the JavaScript side, is this means the information does not have to go through your server. So this will be going directly from their web browser to the REST API, sending the information back. So this can be very useful for things like, let's say, news feeds or weather feeds. So I'm in a particular location. Again, you can get somebody's location. I'm in a particular location, and then I can simply just pull in what the current weather forecast is, or I can simply pull in whatever the current news information is without having to go through your particular server. When we do the REST APIs with JavaScript, there's a number of ways to do REST APIs in JavaScript. We are going to be using the fetch function. So basically, the fetch function basically works a lot like request.get, where basically it's going to go out. You're going to feed it a URL. It'll go to that URL with the information, and then it will pull the information back. When it pulls the information back, you're then going to have these .then. So basically, information comes back, and you're going to say, okay, once the information comes back, .then. What do you do? Then, what do you do? Then, what do you do? So thens are essentially steps in the process for what you want to have happen. When it does come back, you do have to convert it either into text or into JSON, because it will just come back as an object. So again, when the information comes back, you're going to say, I want that as text or JSON. We go down here. When you see this, oops, well, don't want to do that. Anyways, when you see the equal with a little arrow sign, basically this is the JavaScript world. It's a way to denote that a function is coming next. Again, with functions, we dealt with functions in the Python world, def, whatever the function name, and then you do the function. Basically with this, it's saying, okay, take this variable, and basically we're going to do this function with the variable. And I'll show that to you in a second. Let's see here. So this particular example is going to get you the external IP address. So from the user side, from the client side, we are going to go to ipify.org. So I think we've used this REST API before, and we're going to use this in order to get this user's external IP address so they can see what it is. And this one is for text, right? Okay. So again, basically, this is going to be pretty simple. So we have the display, like we had before. We have the script, so const display, we're going to get it. Then we're going to fetch. So all we're doing here is we're calling fetch, and we're feeding it the URL for the REST API that we're going to. There are no API keys. There are no other values that are going into this. We're simply going to https api.ipify.org, and we're going to pull the information in. So this is what we're going to do. And then we do .then. So what is the next step? So basically when we fetch, what we're going to do is we're going to say the value that comes in from the fetch, we're going to call that response, right? This is that little function thing. We do the squiggly brackets to open a function in the JavaScript world. If basically the response isn't okay, throw an error, HTTP error, the status, whatever the response.status is. So basically, if there's an error, we're going to throw an error. Then we're going to return response.text. Then we're going to come here to .then data, so we're coming down the line, right? So basically the value that comes in from fetch, we're going to call that response, and then we're going to process that response. We're going to return response.text. So we're using this to pull out just the text from that object. We go to .then, we're now going to call that value that's coming in data. So we can call this whatever we want. We can call this Bob. Again, the name doesn't matter, right? This could be Bob, that could be Bob, this could be Bob, that could be Sue. It's basically when the value comes in, we have to give it a name so that we can process it. When this gets done, we have to give it a name, so data, so that we can process it. So then data, display.inner HTML, we're simply going to do h1 IP, and then we're going to say what data is, right? So response.text is what we're returning. So we should just be getting text as the IP address. An IP address as text, and basically we're simply going to print this into display in an h1 to see what the IP address is. Catch, so if there's an error, for some reason, console.error, error fetching data, and then whatever the error is. And then we're going to close the script. Right, so if we go and take a look at the REST API.text, oh, where is REST API? So REST API.text, there we go. Woo, exciting. Are you passionate yet? Does it make you passionate? Anyways, so we get IP. Our external IP address is 24.196.170.79. Please do not hack me, right? But that's basically all that is going on here. Again, if we go and take a look at source, and we take a look at console, we can see there's no errors other than that stupid favicon error. But the important thing to understand here, again, with this error status and all that, so let's say if I did api.ipfi.org, and I did nnnn, I did Control S, so we refresh this, right? Failed to load resource, right? Error fetching data, right? So where is it? Okay, yeah, so here we go. So error fetching data, then what the error is. So error fetching data, type error, load failed, anonymous function, 17. So you can try to go through and figure out what's going on. So it says at line 17 in the code, and if we go, well, that's where the error is. Anyways, that basically gives you an idea of the errors, and then you can go back to try to figure out what you're doing wrong. If we do that, we save it, and then we just pull that, and that's just text now. So that is how you go out to a REST API. If all you're getting is text, you can simply use that text method to turn it into text and then print it out on the screen. Let's see here. Then we get to the JSON. So the JSON response. When you're making a JSON request, you need to use the .json. So again, just like in Python, how we use .json, you would use it here. So you get that object in and you turn it into JSON. There's something called JSON.stringify. So what stringify, this function does, is basically what it'll do is it will print out your JSON in a nicely formatted way so you can figure out what the hell it is that you're looking at. So again, when you try to prettify JSON in Python, you use JSON.dumps, the dumps function, and that's how you can turn the JSON into a string that's formatted so you can try to figure out what it looks like. Basically, in the JavaScript world, you use JSON.stringify. You put in the variable name, and then you put null in, and then you put indent. So basically how many spaces in you want to indent for each line that's coming down. So that tries to give you a visual representation of the JSON so you can try to figure out what it is that you're looking for. So let's go take a look at this particular script. So this looks a lot the same way as we did before. We got the display, we got the element, we go to ipfi.org. The difference here though is if you look at this link, we do format equals JSON. So if you don't have that, you just get a text response back, but we actually want to get the JSON response back so that we can start parsing it as JSON. We have this whole error thing like we had before that we don't really care about. Now here's the thing. So we get the data, just like we had before. So now the response is going to come, so the response.json. So that's going to come back as JSON instead of text this time. And now we're going to call it data. So when we call it data, then in order to get the index within JSON, we have to call the index. So basically display.inner HTML, h1 IP, so data.ip, right? So you're going to get this JSON string back, and we're going to say we want the value at index IP. So in the data JSON string, I want you to go to the IP index and print out whatever the hell the value is. Now down here we have pre-tags. So we open pre-tags and we close pre-tags. And why do we do that? We do that because remember ASCII formatting and HTML formatting are different. If you stringify JSON and you print it out onto your web browser screen and you don't use the pre-tag, it's still just going to be one nasty ass line, right? Because stringify isn't using HTML formatting, it's using ASCII, /t/s/n. Here's the thing, web browsers don't care about /n/t and /s. So if you stringify and it has all of these ASCII formatting in there and then you load it into a web browser, you're still just going to get this mess. So what pre-tag does is for pre-formatting. It says keep the text formatting that exists for this particular information. So when we use stringify to format this as text, we're going to keep it, and then we're going to print it out on the screen. And then we have the catch for the error, and then we print out the error if there's an error. Let's see here. So we go here to REST IP JSON, and we pull it up. This is what it looks like, right? So basically, we're going to data. So the data. So this is data. This is data. And then we're going to the index of IP. And when we go to the index of IP, this is the value that we get. So we're printing out IP equals data.ip, and this is the value. Again, from a very simple standpoint, this is what the JSON response looks like when it's stringified, when it's prettified. You open with a squiggly bracket, you close with a squiggly bracket, you have one index for IP, and this is the value for that index. And so you can look at it and go, okay, if I want to get this, I need to go to index IP, and that's how I get the information. This is very simple. Again, as you've seen REST APIs before, it gets much more brutal. So that's the basic of that. So let's come down here to the joke. Oops. Damn it. No. Let's come down here to the joke API. So the joke API is going to show you how to get multiple values. So there is this API for jokes. Again, that's the cool thing about REST APIs. There is an API for everything. There's cat facts. I think we have cat facts in here. There's cat facts, there's dog facts, there's anime facts. One of the things that I like with using these kinds of REST APIs is that it gives you a dynamic response. One of the big problems you can have, especially as a new coder, a new technology professional, is if you're not getting dynamic information back, how do you know whether your script worked or whether you just are getting the exact same response you got before, right? If you're only ever getting back the exact same response, sometimes you can screw up your code, but for some reason it's spitting back the exact same response, and so you think it's working. So one of the nice things about having any kind of dynamic data, that's why I use like random modules or I use these REST APIs, is every time I do a refresh, it should be pulling brand new information so I can verify that it's working, at least it's working theoretically how it's supposed to. Anyways, so we take a look at this, and it's very similar to what we had before. Again, display, we're just showing stuff at the top of the screen. We're basically using this in order to connect to the display. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be fetching, and we go to official joke API at appspot.com, and we want a random joke. All I want is a random joke. Then the response, if it's not okay, throw an error. Then we're going to return the response.json. So now we're going to get that full response as a JSON value back. What we're going to do here is we're going to display.innerHTML. We're going to stringify the response that's going to come back so that we get an idea of what this JSON response looks like, again, so that we can try to parse it. Then I'm simply going to say setup : data.setup, right? So data is the full JSON string that's coming in, and the index for setup is the setup of the joke. We're going to print at the setup. Then we're going to do break, punchline, data.index for punchline. What is the punchline for the joke? And then if there's an error. We go here, we do joke. This is what we get. Anyways, so here is the prettified JSON response that we're getting back. We get a type, general joke, so this is just a general joke. Setup, what do you call someone with no nose? Punchline, nobody knows. Ha ha ha. And then we get an ID of 224, so this must be their ID in the system, right? So basically we're getting this JSON response. We have an index of type, we have an index of setup, we have an index of punchline, and we have an index of ID. Then I'm simply printing that out. So data.setup, what do you call someone with no nose? Punchline. Data.punchline, nobody knows. Ha. If I refresh this, again, dynamic data verifies it's doing what it's supposed to. Type general, setup, punchline, setup, where did you learn to make ice cream? Punchline, Sunday school. See, I don't know. It's a way to make you giggle while you're losing your mind trying to figure out how to do this stuff. Why did the developer go broke? They kept spending all their cash. And again, that's a type programming, so that changed there. So you might parse based off of different things. And so that's one thing you could do. Like when this is coming back, you could say if it's general, like I want the background color to be yellow when it's general. And if it's programming, I want the background color to be blue or something like that. But this is the basic idea of how you're able to bring in the JSON value, and then again on the single layer level of JSON, be able to pull out specific information. Any questions up until this point? Nope. All right. You guys are easy. You guys are either easy or asleep. I will figure you're easy. Okay, so then we get to multi-level JSON. Which is so much fun. So basically this is where, multiple levels. So it's like, you get the JSON response back, right? And then you have one level, and then that you have another level, and then that you have another level, and another level, another level, and you've got to drill down to the exact value that you care about. One of the interesting things when you start dealing with this is going to look a lot like with the Python with JSON, where you have square brackets and you have squiggly brackets. So in Python, you have lists. Lists are numbered indexes between 0 to whatever. They're square brackets. And then you have dictionaries, which basically have a named key, right? Whatever. You have the same type of thing here, but when you call them, you're going to be using periods. So data at index 3.text. So basically with this, what's going to happen is you're going to make the request for cat facts. And you're going to get 5 cat facts back. But maybe you don't want all of the cat facts. Maybe you only want 1 out of the cat facts. So what this is going to say is the data, the JSON value that's coming in, we want to go to index 3. So again, when you're dealing with numbers and these indexes, they start with 0. So 1 is 0, 2 is 1, and 3 is 2. All right. And so I want the tag. I want the cat fact at index 3 of data. Right? So again, this is another weird REST API that exists. We go over, take a look at it. REST cat. There you go. Maybe this is one we should with Louis Rossman on. We should bring Louis in so we can look at the cat facts. All right. So anyways, okay. So we're gonna fetch. So HTTPS cat facts at Roku app facts error as before, and we're gonna bring back the response as JSON. Then for the data, we're simply going to do display.innerHTML. We are going to again that pre-formatting tag. So we're going to stringify the entire JSON response that's coming back so we can try to take a look at it. And then I just simply want to print out one of the cat facts. And so I'm going to print out the cat fact at index 3. If we go and take a look at this, REST cat. Uh-oh. No. REST cat. REST cat. Error. Error fetching data. Oh, of course there's an error fetching rest-cat.html. Right? That's weird. Hold on 1 second. Is the internet still up? The internet seems to still be up. Come on, cat facts! I love these cat facts. Yeah, okay, cat facts. Maybe I went over my my threshold for today. Oh, come on, this is cute. This is adorable. Damn it. Hold on 1 second. Right? REST cat map HTML. Oh. Well, let me use Tunnel Bear. Maybe I need to go somewhere else. Maybe they're blocking my my IP address. Application error. Hold on 1 second. Sorry about this. What's going on, CatFacts? Catfacts.com. Copy. Well, I think I did say before. I did say before the issue of dealing with some people's REST APIs. And sometimes the REST APIs just stop working at the most inopportune times. So yeah. Okay, that API doesn't work. So yeah, I guess these next two examples are going to be a little whatever. So, okay, so yeah. I wasn't expecting that. Let me just make sure. Come on, give me a cat fact. Come on, give me a cat fact. Just one cat fact. Just give me one cat fact. No cat facts? Fuck. Okay, well, yep. Just check the network tab. Fetch. Dum 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 dum. API key. There is no API key. That's the whole reason I use these types of things. There's no API key. Anyways, go with me here. I got to find another REST API for this particular example. So yeah. So basically, imagine in your brain, imagine in your mind, if you got a response back and it had 5 different cat facts, right? So basically, it comes back as opens with a square bracket, closes with a square bracket. So there's multiple indexes there, and then each record is between squiggly brackets. So basically what we're going to say, right? So we have a square bracket, and then we have 5 records. So we're going to say go from 0 to 1 to 2. So go to record 3, and then we're going to print out the text. So the text index is the cat fact for record 3, and that's what's supposed to get printed out here. Supposed to. Anyways, it's not. The next part, though, does get a little wonky since I can't actually show it to you. So one of the things is iterating through JSON records in iterating through JSON records and in JavaScript. So in the Python world, we use those for loops, for X, you iterate through. Basically, in the JavaScript world, you use this map function. And so basically, if we go and we take a look at the script, it's too bad. It's a cool script. Come on. Nope, still not working. Anyways, so what we're going to do here is we want to print out all the facts that are coming back. So basically, we have the display, the same thing we had before, get element by ID. We're going to go to this facts. We're going to send this back as JSON. And so basically, when we bring this back as JSON, so that JSON is going to be data. So we're going to feed this into the map function. So we're going to take the data JSON value. We're going to feed it into the map function. And then each index, each record in that JSON, we're going to call fact. So the value that comes in, we're going to call data. Then we're going to do data.map. Each record, we're going to call fact. And then basically we're going to be able to print out fact.text and then fact.createdAt, right? So text is the text as I was supposed to show you before. CreatedAt is whenever the hell this particular fact was created. And basically this is going to get returned within p tags. We're going to create a constant for facts.html. So we're going to have a variable value called facts.html. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to loop through all of the indexes within data to pull out the text and the createdAt. That's all going to be brought together to facts.html. This is actually going to come out as an array, basically like a list in the Python world. So it'll be this record, comma, this record, comma, this record, comma. We can use the join function. So what the join function will do is it will take that array and basically it will turn that into one string without all of those commas so we can print it out. And then basically we should have all that record information and we can print it out. Basically display.innerHTML will then equal the value that we created here. And I swear it makes a lot more sense when I can show it to you. Oh, Christopher. God. What's up, Chris?
I was going to say, this is a good example of what happened, but I guess you don't know what really happened in this case to try and pull that data. But what if you don't know what's going on? Would there be a resource or a way to figure out how, you need to pull that data?
Well, no, and that's why you have to design what you're doing and figure out what you're doing. Because what you have to understand with all of these APIs, the entire point of the API is basically all the API is a doorway into their system.
Right.
So basically, you can figure out if you're connecting here properly. And then when they're sending data back, you can read it to make sure it's formatted properly. So when you do the JSON, maybe they change the indexes or whatever. But the issue is anything back here is a black box. So if I can ping this, if I can ping it in some way, if I know that it's there, then any failure. And that's one of the important things, again, when you think about looking at APIs, when we start talking about things like cost, is again, the difference between Twilio and some other service that might cost you half as much is, again, it's things like, reliability and that type of deal. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So and that's why you have to think about it, again, like with failover. So again, we have these errors here, right? So, basically all we're doing is errors. And so that's where, again, that's a cool part about service-oriented architecture, right? Again, you're just making these API calls. So let's say jokes were really important. Let's say jokes were important, or cat facts were important, right? So this might be the #1 cat fact site. They got the premium cat facts. But, then there's a level 2 cat facts site. Like, well, they're pretty good cat facts, but they're not perfect. And then maybe down here, there's a 3rd layer cat fact site where actually they're actually good, but they cost money, right? So you don't want to spend very much money. In the tech world, we don't spend a lot of money. So one of the things you can do is you can try to have a failover system, right? So basically, you're trying to pull the information here. If it fails for some reason, you would then write in your code to then go to the second option. If that fails for some reason, then you would have it written into your code that you're willing to spend a couple of cents. Again, that's one of the things you have to think about with value, is you don't want to be spending money for every damn request that you make. That's just going to be too much money. But you also want to make your users happy. Are you willing to put in a failover system so if these fail for some reason, you do pay a little bit of money during that failover scenario, but the users still get the experience that they're expecting. And so that's basically how you would figure out how to do this. Because yeah, that's the thing with the APIs is you literally, and again, do be clear, you have no idea what's going on the other side of that API. And again, like they could fail for any number of reasons. Not only that, but again, like in the real world, I knew somebody, and they were actually asking me for advice on spinning up their own server at home. And again, I didn't think it was any big deal, so I was going to give them some advice. And but then they actually run a business, so they actually run a profitable web app business. And so I was just talking about how to set up the server. I'm like, yeah, that's curious, like because they have the business. What are you running this server for? And he literally said, oh, for the business. He was like, I don't want to pay DigitalOcean $10 a month, so I just want to run a server out of my house. At which point, I talked him out of it. At which point, I explained some sysadmin reality in order to put it back onto DigitalOcean. But that was one of the interesting things. Like this is a for-profit business that actually makes him a decent amount of money, and he was about to host that damn thing out of his house. And again, think about ISP and power connections and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things you have to think about with these APIs is truly how much do you trust the person that's running it? Oh, Jock. What's up, Jock?
So with the failovers, again, all this is running on their computer. So this is not making calls with these API calls and they fail. They're not going to a server. They're just going to making the call. It fails. You go to the next API. It fails. You go to the next one. Yep. So all these are running on their computer and not, yours or a server, correct?
Yeah, so this is running on their system. So this JavaScript is running, again, it's running on their system. Yep.
Could also a failure be because their system might be older? So say, for instance, you might have a failure for one person because they have an old computer, but it doesn't necessarily doesn't fail for another computer. Is there any way you kind of track that?
You could. So again, I'll show you how to send information from here back to your server. But yeah, so like if you try to open up, let's say, large video files, so maybe again, if they have if they have something from 15 years ago, you use JavaScript to try to open up the video file or to do something, it fails out for some reason, you could get alerted to those types of errors, and you could get that user agent information to try to figure out what's going on. So you can do that type of thing. Oop, you muted yourself. Okay. Hopefully that's a good answer. Yep, thumbs up. Okay, so there we go. There's map. So now let's talk about sending data from JavaScript. So this can be a bit of a no, that's not what I'm going to do. This can be a bit of a pain because in the modern world, most browsers try to stop cross-site scripting. Basically what cross-site scripting is when you go to one server and then you're told to open up information at a different server. It can be used for hacking or whatever, right? So basically, you're a user, you go through the cloud, and you're expecting to go to CNN.com, right? But when you go to CNN.com tries to basically pull scripts from somewhere else. Let's say Fox.com. And basically, the idea is that this other server, again, might be trying to grab your information or do nefarious things. And so the idea with cross-site scripting is that you have a script that is on one web app, and basically, you have a script that's on one web server that's trying to be run on a different web server, and you don't want that type of thing to happen. again, there's a lot of protection against that. And so for this class we're doing today, I'm just going to show you how to use get with fetch, because this will actually work, should work in 99% of situations, but there are other ways to get cross-site scripting to function, but you've got to deal with the web browser. Again, that's when we talk about security in the stack, right? You've got your server in Python, you've got JavaScript, but then you've also got the web browser. So nowadays, web browsers have a lot of security built in. So even if you code everything properly, if their web browser just stops the function from working, then it's not going to work properly. So basically with this, what we have is a little script, and what it's going to do is it's going to send to my bottle web server. Right, so let's take a look at these scripts. Send data. Cat go away, JSON go away, joke go away. Oops, where's my send data? Didn't open the send data. Oh, crikey. Let's copy and paste. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so basically what we have here is we just basically have a web page, and then within it, we're going to be using fetch, we're going to be using that template literal, and we're going to be using a GET request. So you can send data basically with HTML, either with post or with GET. Basically with GET, what you're doing is you're sending all of the information through a URL. So basically we just have H1, so we just have a title for the page, getting your data app. Then we have the script. Basically, when you open the script, what's going to happen, or when you open the web page, it's going to fire off the fetch function. We're going to go to localhost :8080 receive. So that's the web page that we're going to, and then we're going to send what the user agent is and the value of the user agent, and we're going to send what the width of the screen is, and we're going to send what the width of or the height of the screen is. And we take a look at the bottle. So this is the bottle web app, and so this is very simple. So again, we've used bottle before. If you're new to the class or new to these classes, bottle is the web app framework that we use with Python a lot. Basically, all this does is it creates a nice little web app framework, web app for us. And so with this, what we're going to do is we're going to import from bottle request one and get at get. So this is a decorator. This is going to be received. So we're going to be able to get values in. So define receive post, we're going to print the data, the entire request that comes in. Then we can print out, basically it's going to print out on the screen here, what the value of the user agent is, what the value of the width is, what the value of the height is. So imagine, again, when you're building your whole web app platform, right, you can have a SQL database on the back end. So instead of printing this out on the screen, you could be sending all of this information to a database, or you could be processing, you could be doing something based off of this information. Then we're simply running at localhost at port 8080. So let me run this. So this is now running now, right? So I'm running localhost 8080. If I go and I find my send data, so this is a send data, so I just simply double click on this, getting your data, right? There's nothing else here. There's literally, I see nothing else on the screen, but when I come here, we can see data. So this is the entire get that got sent, right? So user agent, all that kind of stuff, this is in that URL, and then I can pull out the particular information. So this is where I was able to pull out the user agent. So I can see this user is on a Macintosh, an Intel Mac, a 10.15.7. I can see they're using Safari at this particular version. I can see their, whatever it was, their width. Is it width? I can see their width is, 1920, and I can see their height is 1080. So all of that information was able to come in through that get value, and then I was able to parse it basically by using the request query.get for the user agent, the width, and the height. And again, where you get that from is this actual URL that's coming through, right? if we go to the send data, right, user agent equals navigator.user agent. Width equals screen.width. Height equals screen.height. And so that's a way that you can send information from this particular thing back to your server. Or somebody else's server. Jack, what's up?
So you mentioned before that some browsers block some requests.
Yep.
So is get one of the requests? Because the reason I'm asking that is like, what if you put in a function instead of saying user agent width or height, you wanted to know like screen time, how long they were on your website, or how many times they flip back and forth between the pages of your site, like those pieces of information as well. Does some browsers stop some get functionality, I should say, in something like that?
I don't know. As far as I know, this should work. As long as you should be able to trigger this, and this should work. So however you're collecting those variable values, that's its own deal. You got to go and do some research on that. But if you're able to get the variable values out of their web browser, you should be able to send them using this fetch with a GET request.
So it worked, like it'll work for Safari, it'll work for Chrome, it'll work for Firefox, and all of this works for most of those. I mean, do you have to do our research on pretty much?
You always got to. You always have to, because again, this is one of those things that's changing. Like when people find out you can do something, they do it. When the manufacturers decide to get around to blocking things, it depends on how they have their web browser. So that's why you have to figure out what web browsers your users are using, and then just verify your stuff is working how you think it's supposed to work.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, with a lot of this stuff, like I said, with these particular classes, I'm kind of teaching you, like that's one of the important things to understand about technology, is to start understand the basic concepts of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And then once you figure that out and you understand how the tech stack is supposed to work, then you actually start writing out the code. So this is something, I don't know if we've done an introduction to programming class. I don't know if we actually did that class. There's something called pseudocode. And basically what pseudocode is where you literally sit there and you literally write out what you want to do, right? So you're like, send web page to user, right? And that's a step. All right. When user opens or receives page, send to my server, I don't know, OS and blah, and blah, and blah, right? And you go through and you literally hand write out what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And then it literally turns into paint by numbers of how you do it. You're like, oh, okay, so I planned to send this information using post, something called a post method. But the post method is blocked by default with most of these browsers because of security concerns. That's not going to work. So I wonder if the get method will work. Does the get method work? And then this is one of the screwed up things. Like, okay, so automatically sending post doesn't work. Automatically sending get doesn't work. What can I do? Well, I need the user to manually approve data being sent to my server. So what if I create a form, right? What if I just create a form that says, are you 18? Right? Yes. No. Well, here's the thing, right? So if you have this button or whatever, there's a yes value or a no value. But in there, you might also be able to plug in a whole bunch of hidden values of the operating system and the time and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's like, okay, if I can't do post and I can't do get automatically, well, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this thing that's just going to seem so natural to the end user. Oh, of course I've got to click a button. But when I click a button, I'm going to put all my information in these hidden fields, and all of that's going to get sent to my server. And so that's where why pseudocode is important, is again, it simply then becomes a paint by numbers game. And again, this is where I talk about with real tech professionals, is real tech professionals, 90% of your work is on the whiteboard, right? This is where the work happens. And then once you've figured out how everything is supposed to flow, then you just sit down at the tedium of writing out the code. Okay, nope. What does nope mean, Jock? What's that?
So this is the first time we cover pseudocode. So that's what that note means.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's pseudocode.
okay.
Yeah.
And is this how you kind of get around, like what you just did? Is that how we get around some security protocols in the browser? Is just by creating a form that allows the user to give us the permission to access their information, or for us to send them information around security procedures in a sense?
Yeah, because many times the security procedures, basically what the web browser requires from a security standpoint is that somebody manually approves. Now here's the thing, whether they know what the fuck they're actually approving. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. So basically this is just simply using the get. And again, there's other ways to send the data. Again, with all of this stuff, do you realize I'm trying to dumb all this stuff down so I can teach this in a class. This stuff gets way more complicated. Let's see here. Oh, sending supplemental data. Yeah, so this is the interesting one too. So spy script. Let me stop that. So we go to the spy script. So again, one of the interesting things here is that, remember, right? So our user can make REST API calls. And this might also be something for you to prevent getting data that you don't necessarily want. Do remember, in the modern world, like, there's a fetish for data by a lot of tech companies, but there's a lot of risk when you have data, right? So if you have personally identifiable information in your systems and you do not secure it properly, that might be a vulnerability to your company. Right? If you do everything properly, but your company gets sued because they have too much data, that's a bad thing. So one of the things you can think about, again, as I showed you before, those REST API calls, is one of the things you can do is you can have the user make a REST API call, get the response back from the REST API call, parse whatever that response is, and then send you just the information that you need, right? So like things like IP addresses. IP addresses are considered personally identifiable information. And if you store IP addresses in an improper way, especially if you're in Europe, you might get sued for it. Well, one of the things you have to be thinking about is, why do you want the IP address? For the love of God, why do you want the data? There's this thing in that, like, we gotta have more data. Why? What are you using the data for, right? So in this particular example, the reason that I want the data is I want to know what city people are coming from, right? I just want some basic demographic information on cities. I don't really care your zip code. I don't care about anything else. Just if I can know what city or maybe what state, that's what I care about. I don't care about the IP address. So one of the things you can do is you can have the user make the request to that IP address API. They can then get back all the geographic information about their IP address. And then from that, you can grab just the city or just the state or the very specific information that you care about, and then send just that information to your servers. So therefore, you don't have to worry about any additional information. Chris, what's up? Chris, what's up? No, you gotta unmute yourself. I can ask. There you go.
Okay. I would, just a comment, I would think that they're trying to find out your identity when they try to seek that data. I mean, they're trying to find out everything about you so that way they can learn about you and, advertise, or mostly, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, just site shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And that's the thing is they do theoretically want this information. Again, there's like the days of the world. Again, I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Buddha. Everything that I teach you comes from the Buddhist mindset. They're the days of the world. Here's the thing. Fuck them. I care about the me. I care about me. I care about my clients. I care about my business. So whatever the hell insanity that they're doing, whatever, right? Keep an eye on it because you don't want it to leak onto you. But what you need to be thinking is when you go to your boss or when you go to, whoever is giving you your marching orders, understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Again, that's where I go back. Again, Dojo, right? The name of this Silicon Dojo. Again, and a lifetime ago, I did other stuff. And that's one of the things I talk about when I went through executive protection training. Again, one of the ideas with bodyguard work is if somebody comes up to your principal, the person that you're trying to protect, and you go all fucking Bruce Lee on them and you send them to the hospital, if your principal gets sued for $5 million a month from now because you went all Bruce Lee, you did not protect your principal. You only protect your principal if you guys walk away and everybody's forgot that day even happened. And so that's one of the things like with this kind of data stuff is it's not what those yahoos are doing. When your boss says, we want to collect all of this information, it is your responsibility to say, hey, what are we actually trying to accomplish? What data do we actually care about? Let's only collect that information and explain to them because with GDPR and all this other kind of stuff, literally having this may be millions of dollars in fines for data that we don't even do anything with, right? So that's the kind of thing to think about. Yeah. No, not you. Anyways, okay, Jock, I'll get to you. You've had lots of questions. let me get to the end of this. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is our user is going to make the REST API call. We're going to be getting back the response. We're parsing the response, and we're sending only the information that we actually care about. Constant display. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to do fetch. And so fetch ip-api.com JSON. So this is going to be getting us our geographic information about our computer from our IP address. What this is going to do is going to get our external IP address. It's going to run that across the database. It's going to pull back a whole bunch of information. We're going to come back here. So display .inner HTML. So basically, this is going to display on the screen. So basically, in display, user agent, and it's going to say what our user agent is, and then data.city. So navigator.userAgent, so navigator like we did before, user agent, then data, right? The value that's coming in is JSON. All I want is the city index. Then we're going to go to fetch. We're going to do localhost 8080 receive. We're going to receive user agent equals user agent and city equals the city. Data.city, right? So I run this. So basically this is the bottle script right here. So we have receive. The request is going to come in and that's going to print out the user agent and it's going to print out the city. So we're going to run this. There we go. And then we're going to go to the spy script. Where's my spy script? So I'll run this. There we go. Okay, so spy script and H1 tag, user agent. So this is all the information about this particular client, right? The operating system, same stuff we did before. And it's getting the city of Atlanta. Oh yeah, I still have my VPN on. So it's pulling the IP address of wherever it is. And so the information for that IP address is Atlanta. Now we go here, and what we can take a look at is with our bottle script, right? Data. So this was the whole get value that came in. Then here we have the user agent, and then here we have the city, right? So basically, what I could do here is let's say somebody was logged into my system, so somebody actually uses a username, so I could log the username along with the user agent, along with the city that they're currently logging in from, and then I can use that for analytics. So basically, if the marketing people say, what are 10 biggest cities, in popularity, basically if all of this is getting dumped into a database, then you can pull out that information without having to have the identifiable IP addresses and some of that other stuff. And so that's basically all we're doing here. And again, it's the kind of thing about thinking about, it's like how you layer scripts so that you're pulling information from one thing and sending that value to another, sending that value to another, sending that value to another. Again, like when we look at this, when we talk about architecture, right? So, basically what we have going on here, right? You have the user, right? You have your server. So you send them the web page. They open the web page. When they open the web page, that makes a REST request to somebody else's server. That information gets pulled out. You then pull the city value out of it, plus your user agent value out of it, and then that gets sent to your server. And it's kind of like how you start thinking about how all of this architecture works and why it is you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. Again, this is great for, again, trying to, it's not quite anonymizing your users, but it definitely is collecting less information than you need to. Chris, what's up?
So, in trying to gain data, you can, let's say like they're on a VPN or a secure network or whatever the case is, you could, if they're in Atlanta, can you still find out where their original location is?
So here's the thing. Here's where this kind of stuff gets tricky. And again, with the whole idea of de-anonymizing, and it's actually in the end of this, right? So have you ever done this where you're using a VPN, you open up all these web browser tabs, and then you just shut your computer, and then you open your computer, and your VPN logged yourself out, but you have all of these tabs that are now open. If any of them refresh, they're now going to be pulling this information. See, what happens when we use a VPN, right? You're going to somebody else's server. So what happens is the traffic goes here, it goes to that REST API, and so this is the information that you're being read back. You close your server, or you close your computer, therefore your connection to the VPN is down. You then open your computer again, it auto connects to the Wi-Fi. If any of those pages refresh, they're now going to be refreshing off of your local connection if you don't have a. And so yeah, let's see, like with this, right? So I'm here, right? So spy script. So spy script right now is going through Atlanta, right? So blah, blah, Atlanta. Now here's the thing, right? I shut my computer, whatever. My VPN goes down. My VPN is now disconnected. I'm not thinking about it. I open this up again. Imagine if this is like an auto refresh page or something like that. It gets refreshed, and now the person knows I'm coming from Asheville. And so this is the kind of thing, it's called leakage in the cybersecurity world, is where you can have issues where you start leaking information because systems aren't necessarily working how you thought they were going to be working. So that is a way to de-anonymize somebody. Let's see here. Okay, and so, oops, not that one. What else do we got? Yeah, that will be the end of the class. So that's the basic idea of the class. Again, how you can pull some of this information automatically from the user's web browser, simply by using Navigator or Screen or any of the other properties that are available. Showing you how to use these REST APIs. So these REST APIs are actually running from the user's computer. And again, you can use this for performance reasons. If it's running from the user's computer, it means that's not hammering the hell out of your servers. You might be using this, again, if you're actually a decent human being and you're not trying to steal all the information from the user, as a way to clean up data before it comes into you, so you only collect the specific information that you want. Or you can use it to spy on people or whatever else. And then you can send that information, again, using a GET request with fetch or whatever GET method with fetch. You can send that information to your systems. That is the class. Oops, Jack had a question. What sued for too much data? Yeah, so you can get sued for too much data. If you do not protect your data properly, you can get sued. And Europe is going to be going after people more and more with it. Yeah. All right, Jack, what's up?
Just want to make sure you're done with the class before I ask my question.
Yep, done with the class.
Right. So if I'm creating a website and I'm trying to gather information to provide better, transition of resources to a industry, I'll just say healthcare for myself.
Yep.
And I'm trying to collect resources from different states and different parts of the city. And I'm using this and APIs to try to collect the data to find out, again, diseases or whatever from different cities and provide it. I'm tracking the city along with IP addresses to do that. I'm only providing the city to the customer, but I'm keeping the IP address to make sure that they're valid. Is that wrong to do in a sense? I'm not giving my customers IP addresses, I'm just giving the city. But I'm storing the IP addresses along with the city to make sure that they match and to just keep track of those things. Is that kind of like a violation?
I am not a lawyer. As far as I understand, what the European ruling on it is it's, what the fuck is it? They use words. It's called legalese. There's actually a term called legalese. It's not English, it's legalese. And it's like, what is it? You can only keep identifiable information for as long as it's needed for like service purposes or whatever. So like for security purposes, right? Something I'm surprised more companies don't do. So the idea is if I'm always logging in from a particular IP address, or let's say a number of IP addresses, I might be able to keep those IP addresses from a security standpoint. So if I know the 10 IP addresses the person normally logs in from, if they log in from something else, I can then require them to answer a question or do two-factor authentication or something like that. Like basically that's how the ruling seems to be, is it's like you can have that type of information again from whatever it's called, the functional, it's like for a reasonable amount of time if there's actually a functional purpose for it. But again, what is a functional purpose? What the hell is a reasonable amount of time? So that's where like you might do things like if you want to identify, and again, you got to be careful with this because even with this can run afoul of the law. So it didn't run afoul of things before, but now it can run afoul of things. So let's say it's like, okay, so you're pulling in people's IP addresses, 208.66.55.4. And so with this IP address, there's a lot of stuff you can get. Again, you can get that geographic data, you can get all that. Let's say that's not what I really care about. What I really care about is I want an identifier. I just want a unique identifier. So theoretically, what you could do is you could send this through what's called a hashing mechanism. So what a hashing mechanism does is it turns data into what's called a cryptographic hash. It's basically this really long text. So it's supposed to be unique. So basically this hash matches this. And so the idea is then whenever an IP address comes in, what you can do is you can hash that IP address and then you store the hashes. And basically what you're doing is you're not filtering based off of IP address, you're filtering off of hash. And so 208.66.55.11 is always going to hash to the exact same hash value. So when this comes in, you change it to a hash value, and then basically you identify the IP address by the hash. That gives you an identifiable, pointer or reference without actually storing the IP address. And so that's one of the things that can be done, again from that security standpoint, right? If you have 10 different IP addresses, then you can simply hash and so if it's any hash other than those 10, let's say, then you fire off the security mechanism. The issue is, again, when you start getting these rulings, what is tracking and what is identifiable. So this, everybody knows is identifiable, but this, again, you get the wrong judge or the wrong prosecutor, they could start saying that's the identifiable. again, that's, yeah. Anyways, does any of that make sense?
Yeah, because also with HIPAA laws is like you cannot, you have to store information that's de-identified.
Yeah.
So if I have a person's name, information, all that stuff, I have to, if I'm working with another organization, I provide them information, but I have to make sure it's de-identified. So I don't provide their name, I don't provide their social security number, I don't provide a phone number. I probably might just provide some, just some information that I collected on my site from that person to provide my client the information they need to be able to do what they want to do. But if it's in the medical space, I have to make sure it's de-identified. So then I can, like you're saying, I should be able to hash that information and still provide it for them because I have the original information. I just give it to them in a hash statement. Oh no, the way you're looking like,
This is getting into legalese. I can explain to you guys how to do hash values. That's the law. And again, I'd be very careful in the modern world. So just be careful.
Copy. Thank you.
Yeah. Azure Health Data Services provides that service in specific regions. And that's one of the things too. Like as a tech professional, is one of the things you really do have to ask yourself is: do you want to reinvent the wheel, or do you want to provide somebody else's service that already has the stamp of approval? Again, if Azure already has services for storing medical records and they allow cross-platform access in a legal way, I would go with them. So there we go. Let's see, Jock, thumbs up. Any more questions? Any more questions? Friday night. Questions. No questions. Let's see here. If it is public IP address and the company has registered that IP address publicly, the information would not seem to be illegal, but you should check the laws to make sure. Yeah, I don't know. Check the laws. Again, if you really want to know the growth industry, if you really want to be successful in technology in the next decade, get your Juris Doctor. There is going to be more innovation in the legal space as far as technology is concerned than there probably will be in the actual technology space. Do realize, again, for the past 20 or 30 years, it has been a wild west for how these companies have operated, and they've operated piss poorly. Again, as a technology professional, I'll say this. Our industry has been piss poor with how they've dealt with basically the wider community and the wider world. And so we're going to start seeing more and more of these services get hammered on. And so again, that's where, it's that whole thing that I say about like safety or whatever, is I always want to stay like a mile away from the Grand Canyon. So if you've never been to the Grand Canyon's amazing. But one of the scariest things about the Grand Canyon is you can literally walk the hell off the edge. Like again, the Grand Canyon's huge, obviously. And when it drops, it drops wherever you're at. It's going down at least a few hundred feet. And again, you're in the main tourist, the visitor area, and there are no guardrails. If you're a kid on a bike and you're like, you can just go whoop, you just go off. You're gone. No more kid, right? And so anyways, that's one of the things I think about like with security, is if I'm in the Grand Canyon, I want to be a mile away from that cliff edge. I don't want to be like close enough to the cliff edge so that if I accidentally trip, I stumble off the I stumble off the cliff edge, right? I don't want to be like, oh, I got lost in the trail and wasn't paying attention and I fall off the cliff edge. I want to be a mile away from that cliff edge. And that's one of the things to be thinking about, like from a security standpoint and when you start building your systems. And again, this is a very important thing to start asking yourself, is what the ever-loving hell is it that you're trying to accomplish? Again, that's a very simple thing. Again, from a marketing standpoint, from a security standpoint, from all these other standpoints, what is it that you're actually trying to accomplish? And if you really try to drill down and figure out what you're trying to accomplish, and then you just use, again, some basic concepts, whether it's hashing or whatever else, you're like, okay, this is what we're looking for. Again, if I'm getting a city value, I don't want to hash the city value. I need to know what the hell the city is, right? But again, if all I'm trying to do is if I'm getting a value that I just need to be unique so that I can query against it in the future, then I can turn it into a hash. And so that's what you need to be doing, is you need to be really thinking about what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your systems, and then thinking about, again, rather simple, easy ways of trying to make that data, secure enough. The other valuable thing with this too is it starts to force you to think about what your company is doing. This is one of the big problems. This is one of the big problems going on in the tech industry right now. And this is why tens of thousands of tech professionals are getting laid off, right? So we've had essentially 0% interest rates or really low interest rates for a long time. And so basically, investors have been what's called chasing returns. If you can't get any return off of municipal bonds, then you're trying to put your money into something that will get you returns. And so the tech industry has appeared as if that's the place to get to returns. And so investors have been dumping more and more and more money into these tech companies. Well, these tech companies get more and more money, and then to prove that they're doing something, they hire more and more people. They're not necessarily building more projects. They're not necessarily deploying more things that people actually care about. They're just getting more butts in seats. And so that's the thing, like with collecting all of this data, right? Is people stop focusing on what problem they're trying to solve and how their solution solves that specific problem. And they start getting this world of just building. Oh, we need data. Okay, well, let's collect everybody's data. Well, if we collect everybody's data, then we need a data center in order to store all of that data. And then we build out a data center. Then you need sysadmins in order to maintain that data center. And then that data center gets filled up. So maybe you need another data center. And then you start getting so much data that then there has to be some kind of like intermediary to figure out what data is important and what data is not important, even though none of it's being looked at. And so then you come up with another system. And you start looking at a lot of these tech companies nowadays, and you have so many employees that are completing technical tasks. Again, it's important to understand this. They're completing technical tasks to an adequate level, but that task should have never been on anybody's plate to begin with. Again, and that's the thing. Think about the data coming in. If you only collect exactly the amount of data that you need, then the storage requirements for that data is going to be so much less. Right? They talk about that with, they had this idea with autonomous vehicles, right? The reason 5G was going to be necessary. Remember 5G? Right? Why we needed 5G is each autonomous vehicle was going to be sending back 5 terabytes of data a day back to the vendors. So Tesla was going to send back 5 terabytes of data back to Tesla's headquarters per day for processing purposes. Does that make sense in anybody's world? And I think one of the things is that idea of we're just going to send everything we possibly can and then figure out what to do with it later. Again, think about it. If you're bringing back 5 terabytes a day, that means the car itself has to collect all that information, which is pretty whatever. But then 5 terabytes per car has to be sent from each car across the internet. Think about how much. I mean, they complain about usage of Netflix. This is 5 terabytes per vehicle. And that 5 terabytes per vehicle then goes back to a headquarters and go back to a data center. Each car, right? They sell, what do they sell? Like 2 million cars per year? Each one of those 2 million cars would be sending 5 terabytes of data back to that data center that then has to get stored, and then that gets processed. And the question is, how long do you keep 5 terabytes per car? And then think about all the tech employees that are employed simply to babysit data nobody's going to give a damn about. Right? And that's the thing to think about when I say with all of this stuff. And again, really question, what are you doing and why? Again, when you sit down with the CEO, that's one of the things I talk about. Again, I talk about racism a lot and sexism. Oh, what does social justice have to do with any of it? Again, to be clear, for Silicon Dojo, damn near all of it, just to be crystal clear. But one of the important things here is, again, it's the idea of you're dealing with the person, not the story. Right? When you sit down with a CEO, when you sit down with a decision maker, I don't want you to sit down with a CEO. I don't want you to sit down with a decision maker. I want you to sit down with the person that is essentially hiring you to perform a task. And again, think about it. When you think about a CEO, if a CEO tells you to do something, how are you going to respond? If essentially a client is asking you to solve a problem, how are you going to respond? And so when that CEO says, I want all the data, you go, oh, you want all the data, do you? Oh, that's interesting. So when you say all the data, just, what's all the data? And they explain, oh, okay, so that's all the data. Well, do we really need this bit of data? Oh, we probably don't need that bit of data. Okay, we don't need that bit of data. Do we need this bit of data? We probably don't need that. Okay, we don't need that bit of data. So this little bit of data here, what are we actually trying to accomplish when we're collecting this bit of data? And again, one of your jobs is to sit there and talk with the person across from you to figure out what the hell you're actually trying to build. And by doing this, it's painful. I mean, apparently, I've never had an issue with this, right? I had employees. Employees would like run the other direction. But the thing is, like, it seems painful, right? To push back on a CEO, to push back on a decision maker and be like, is that really what you want to do? Look, sir, yes, sir, you're writing my check. You're paying my salary. But you're paying me a salary to do a good job for this company. So as a professional, I'm asking you these questions, right? Pushing back a little bit, and again, it's not even a lot, a little bit, when those executives are hammering you, can make life just so much better for everybody, right? So anyways, something to think about there. So anyways, there you go. So it is Friday night. It is Friday night. So anybody got anything else to say? Any other questions? Questions. No questions. Cool enough then. Okay, so yeah. We are having more classes. Again, as far as online goes, we will be having the templates with Bottle App Framework. Yay. So the bottle framework is this thing that I was showing you today. I realize I haven't taught you the templates, so we're going to talk about templates and some other things. That will be a Wednesday, and then we're going to have a Raspberry Pi introduction class, and that will be next Friday. Again, if you are in the Asheville area, we're going to be doing the OpenAI API with Python. That is going to be on Tuesday from 9 o'clock to noon, somewhere like that. And that's going to be here in Asheville, so you actually come in, we set up your computer, you actually start building these projects. It allows me to help you out, if you're running into problems, anything like that, build a little community, the whole 9 yards. And again, like I say, we've secured American Underground in Durham as a place to teach classes up in the RTP area. So probably in January, we're going to be starting those classes. So yeah, so that is what is going on. Again, if you like the classes and you have the ability, DonorBox exists. I'm just saying, it's there. It exists. Do what you want to do. And let's see, will at some point the classes be offered online/hybrid? So no, I'm not. Oh God, no. Oh God, no. That's a real answer for you. So when I do in-person classes, they will only be in person. Online classes are online, in-person classes are in person, because it's a different requirement set. Teaching classes in a physical world is different than teaching classes in the online world. The other thing too, and something for you guys just to think about in general, again, I've been doing video content creation since 2009, apparently over 15 years at this point. One of the things I will tell you is people think that cameras are windows mentally. I'm going to tell you that a camera is a door. I don't know what the hell is coming through that door, but something does, right? So if you have small classes, so again, with the classes that we're currently having between 2 to 10 people, having a camera in the room with sub 10 people, something else is in that room with you. And I don't want it. I don't want it in the room. It changes the entire environment. So I just simply have zero interest in it. Once the classes get bigger, I mean, theoretically, if I had 50 people in the room, then the room starts to become big enough. The camera stops psychologically mattering to the same degree. We might have a camera then, but it almost wouldn't be an educational thing for anybody at home. It would just be more like, I don't know, a dog watching cats on TV, because it's like, because again, like right now, like with me, I'm talking to you, or I'm talking I'm talking to all of you. Like, I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to all of you, like, right? Whereas, again, if I was in a classroom, I'd be talking to them. And that's a whole different ball of wax. So do not expect the physical classes to be, broadcast or whatever else. And if that is it, then we will call it a day. See y'all Wednesday or whatnot.